Hello. This werewolf beat me very badly. Yes, I am a supernatural being, and no one believes that one werewolf defeated me. The reason for this is karate. Yes, this werewolf has a black belt in karate. I grew up in a small little Arizona desert town. We're talking no rain some years, dirt as far as the eye could see, as hot as 120-degree summer highs, 90-plus-degree summer nights. So yeah, not a place a whole lot of people would want to live. Which always made me wonder why my parents moved us there when I was an infant of only 2. The shore crime was next to non-existent, though I personally felt the rattlesnakes made up for that. Anyway, I didn't come here to bore you with the woes of growing up in the desert. No, I came here to share what happened to me when I was about 15 years old or so. My friends and I loved to explore the desert. There were lots of canal ditches for water runoff. When it did happen to rain, it could end up raining hard, causing flash flooding and all that. Abandoned buildings, houses, often in the absolute middle of fucking nowhere, and a whole lot of nothing. Though it was cool when you found the occasional coyote skeleton, or donkey skull, or stuff of the likes. Some of the abandoned buildings could really have a creepy vibe too, though I chalk that up to a 15-year-old's mind and the fact anything abandoned can be creepy. If you've ever lived in a rural area, you'll know how much of the sky you can see. I live in a bigger city in Washington state now, and you can still see a lot of stars, but my god, it doesn't even come close to the desert. But you'd also see a lot of strange lights in the sky. I still to this day am almost positive my friends, myself, and some older people of the town saw experimental aircraft being used by the government. I mean, testing in the middle of absolutely fucking nowhere would make a lot of sense. I mean UFO alien, though I am in no way claiming aliens type shit, lights that would cover as a helicopter could, but then shoot off moving much faster than any airliner jet could. Though I have to digress, I've gotten quite a bit off track of my story before even really starting it. So one hot and dry summer night, my friends and I decided we'd go camping. No tent really needed. When we went camping, we'd pretty much go to a random site in the desert, bringing wood and etc. for a fire. Only you can prevent brush fires. When you make a campfire in the desert, you have to make sure that shit is out, because what bushes and few trees are out there are dry as hell, with sleeping bags and supplies for food and water. I was pretty excited for it, but my friends ended up cancelling. Oh well, not a whole lot I can do there. I still decided to fuck it and ended up going on my own. So leaving my house just after the sun went down with my backpack full of everything I'd need for the night. My parents still thought my friends were coming along. I didn't want to tell them the truth in case they'd refuse to let me go without anyone else. I mean, they trusted me. They knew I know how to respond if I ran into a rattlesnake. Not that there is too much worry that after dark, not to play with scorpions and all that fun stuff. I hiked maybe about 2 miles into the middle of nowhere before I decided where I was at was as good as any other spot. Now, this was 2005, cell phones existed, and even more towards town you could get coverage. But kids didn't really have phones in these days, and where I was wouldn't get coverage anyway. Back then, like it was so long ago, haha, you had to rely on your own sense of direction and landmarks to not get lost. Not that no one does that nowadays, but yeah, with GPS plus Google Maps plus coverage just about everywhere now, there's not a whole lot to reason to. I had headed north towards the mountains far off in the distance and knew how to get back by heading in the opposite direction. If I accidentally headed to southwest or east, I would still eventually run into train tracks. All I had to do then was turn north to orientate myself and then head east or west. From there it could get a bit more complicated, if lost, of which way to head, but I knew plenty of landmarks both in the east and west, so I should be able to orientate myself pretty well fairly quickly. Anyway, another huge digression and I apologize. So I set up my little camp, roasted some hot dogs and drank some water. I eventually ended up lying on the ground and staring up at the Milky Way. I used to love to be able to stare at the stars and get lost in them. I was also listening to music on my MP3 player. We're talking 2005 here. iPods and MP3 players were thankfully a thing, even if modern cell phones hadn't obsoleted them yet. After enough time and several playlists, I found myself getting tired, so I turned off my MP3 player and got myself ready for some sleep under the stars. I woke up with a start, absolutely no clue why. I brought my wrist with my watch on it up to my face before hitting the button that caused a faint green glow to read the time, 1 a.m. I pulled out my water to get a drink, wondering what had caused me to wake up. Then I heard it. It was faint but definitely the sounds of footsteps off in the distance. I was alert now. I was 2 or so miles away from town in the middle of nowhere. My fire had been put out before bed, but I wasn't worried by much. Coyotes did their best to avoid humans like a plague. There were no scorpions that were a real danger to humans where I lived, and donkeys weren't going to mess with some guy sleeping. But the fact that something had bothered to get this close to me had me on edge. For me to be able to actually hear the footsteps, it wasn't a rabbit or mouse. So I got up and pulled my flashlight out of my pack, turning it on. I shined the beam off into the distance. Some shrubbery, but that was about all I could see. I stood up, turning around, trying to check every direction as good as I could to see if someone was fucking with me. Nothing. I knew I had heard it though. Through my head ran some stories that trickled down to our community through the nearby Native American reservations and tribes. I shook my head. I shouldn't be thinking of any of that right now. I didn't need to be any more wound up than I was already. So I lied down on top of my sleep bag again and closed my eyes. If I could just fall asleep and wake up after dawn, everything would be okay. But I heard it again. Closer this time, off to my right. I grabbed my flashlight, which I had laid down right next to me, and jumped off, turning it on all in one swift and fluid motion, and shined the light in the direction I had heard it from. What I saw made my heart race. The silhouette of something human-shaped, and eyes glowing green with the reflection of my light. I tried to scream, I felt it build up in my throat, and by all means, I should have, but nothing came out. And then it was gone. It got down on all fours like some type of canine, well, more like a human trying, and doing a good job, imitating a canine, and ran off. My flashlight was pretty decent. I could clearly see a good 30 feet in front of me before the beam got so weak that things became fuzzy with weakening light. But it was out of my beam of light so fast I'm not even truly sure I had seen it at all. I was shaken up pretty badly now. I didn't even lie back down. I just sat. I opened up the second backpack that I had brought solely for firewood and ended up using the rest to build another fire. Someone had to be fucking with me, right? Or maybe it was some demented serial killer? I shook my head. Not much crime happened where I lived, and when it did happen, it was an assault from drunkards fighting at the one bar in town that got enough people over 40 in it every night drinking the night away to stay in business. Even more rarely was a break-in with a few things stolen while someone isn't home. But murders? They were unheard of. So what was happening? Did my friends find out I was going camping anyway and decide to follow me and fuck with me? I wasn't sure, but one thing I knew, I didn't want to attempt to walk home until it was daylighted out. More time passed. I took a look at my watch again. 2:30. There hadn't been any more incidents yet, and it should be light enough for me to feel safe walking home by 5:30 or 6, so 3 more hours of nothing happening and I was good. Of course, I wouldn't be so lucky. Around 3 or so I heard the footsteps again. They were more constant this time, starting off in the distance and slowly getting closer. Fuck, 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 fuck. That was all I could think as I held my breath. They stopped. Maybe 10 feet, 15 if I was lucky, from where I sat. I looked in the direction I had heard them, and just outside of where my fire's light ended was a pair of glowing green eyes standing at about 5'9" or so, about my height. They didn't move, just staring directly at me. Then it slowly inched closer, letting the light just barely illuminate its form. The closest way I could think to describe it is like a werewolf, Hollywood monster movie type. But that is just the closest. It had many differences. A lot less fur for sure. You could actually see scarred human skin underneath the fur. Its head, while also hairy, was much more human than wolf. Its mouth was pulled back, revealing very long and pointed teeth. Those resembled a werewolf's more than humans. It didn't howl or anything of the sort, and I was pretty sure this thing had no wolf of the dog in it. It was something else. It did let out a low, very inhuman growl before stepping back into the darkness and disappearing. What the hell? All I could think was it wanted me to see it. Wanted me to know how fucked I was. Remember when I mentioned all the weird things you would see in the sky out here? You'd also hear weird shit at night. I think everyone chalked it up to coyotes and such things, but I think I now knew what it was. I mean, I had walked to friends' houses, camped, etc. before at night and never actually saw anything until now, so it is much more mundane things like a coyote making very unique noises just made sense. I sat there terrified now, like almost pissing myself scared. 4 a.m. rolled around though with no more incidents, and I was starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Then I started hearing the footsteps again. It wouldn't come into the light this time, but I could tell it was circling my little camp. Like a predator planning its attack on its prey. I had nothing to use as a weapon. No gun. No knife. If such things could even hurt it, so I knew if it attacked I was fucked. I mean, I'd fight back the best I could, but let's face it, I would have been dead in seconds. Then on all fours, it ran through my camp, right past me, so close if I stuck my elbow out I would have touched it, and into the darkness on the other side. It was fucking with me now. I had heard of predators playing with its food, much like cats with mice. I wondered if I'd wait until right before dawn to make its move. I wondered if it even really needed to eat or just killed because it was something dark and evil. 4:30 now, it had been circling my camp non-stop for the last half hour, sometimes stepping into the light to let me get a look at it before disappearing back into the darkness. 5 a.m. and I could actually see the sun starting to come up. Another 30 minutes or so and there should be enough light to illuminate everything in a faint, but seeable way. If you ever stayed up to watch the sunrise, you'll know what I mean. I wasn't sure why I was still alive. It was still circling my camp, but just maybe I would actually survive this ordeal. As that thought ran through my mind, it stepped into the light again, straight across from me. It approached my fire, stare never wavering from me. It lifted its foot and used it to put my fire out. I smelt no burning flesh, no stench of burnt hair. Even with no flashlight on or fire, I could see the green reflective eyes still. It hadn't moved an inch. I picked my flashlight back up and turned it on, shining it on whatever the hell this thing was. It looked like it was thinking, always looking right at me. I stood up, which made it tilt its head, but I didn't move to run. I didn't move at all, not an inch. I just stared it down. If I was going to die, then I was going to die with a bit of dignity. Then, it backed away, walking backward much more fluidly than a person ever could. And it disappeared again. Between now and dawn I heard no more noises, no footsteps, nothing. When it was light enough I checked around my camp and saw so many footprints that were 3/4 human and 1/4 something else. I made it home and never mentioned what happened, not to a soul before now. I figured no one would believe me anyway. Just some kid making up stories or too active of imagination and got a bit spooked while camping. I never saw the thing again. I also never went camping again, not once to this very day. I still wonder what the thing was. Some government experiment that escaped a facility somewhere hidden in the desert? A real-life werewolf? Or something dark and evil left over from some earlier time, when humans wrote of dragons, unicorns, and krakens, or something even older than that?